The most fascinating thing to me was that I got to speak to, for example, SpaceX engineers. I got to speak to Harvard biologists. I mean, even Elon and Zuckerberg were on at one point. Like, everybody was on this platform.
Welcome to a new episode of Most Memorable Journeys. My guest today is somebody that I met in a very strange way. He is a tech and entertainment entrepreneur, but the reason why I know him is because during the pandemic, when we were all desperate to travel and we couldn't go anywhere, many of us ended up in Clubhouse. And there was this one room in Clubhouse which I got hooked on because it was called the International Airport Lounge, and we were all dying to go to an international airport lounge. And today I am speaking to the founder of that Clubhouse room, Klaus Derendorf. Welcome to Most Memorable Journeys.
Good morning from Los Angeles, Elizabeth. Thank you so much for having me.
Well, thank you so much for taking the time to do this because you're a busy man and it's early in the morning where you are. But I have been thinking about you so many times because so many times I have had guests on my podcast who I have met in the International Airport Lounge. What gave you the idea? How did this come about?
Yeah, thanks. It was a really fascinating and wonderful social experiment, so to speak. Obviously, the pandemic was so unexpected. You know, we are, as humans, we are social beings, right? We, of course, besides our immediate circle of friends and colleagues, we like to go out and meet people, engage with new people, go to conferences, events, and we travel. And, you know, this app Clubhouse was emerging in late 19 and then 2020. And I was, invited. At that time, you had to be invited. So a friend of mine invited me and I checked it out and I was listening to, all kinds of audio discussions going on. And at the time, this was a new format, right? They called it social audio. Rather than, tweeting or Instagramming or using Facebook, people could actually speak and converse about whatever subject they chose. And I thought it was great. But as you probably remember, there were a lot of discussions about people selling products, services. There was a lot of, if I may say so, shady hustles going on, and
Yes,
people were pitching anything in the world you can think of. Now, on one hand, we had to be mindful of the fact that, a lot of people did lose work in the pandemic, and they probably had to come up with new ways to generate income, make a living. That's all fine. But I kind of wanted to, I thought about what kind of place would I like to go to meet interesting people. And an international airport lounge, I thought, was like the closest sort of concept that I could think of. Because when we travel, we have a layover, let's say in a major airport, we walk into a lounge, we sit down at the bar, we meet random people from around the world, most likely well-traveled professionals who are, who have knowledge of the world geopolitically, who understand culture and humanity. And I thought that would be a great experiment. So I started this club. I called it the International Airport Lounge. And people started coming. And next thing you know, we were building one of the most incredible communities on Clubhouse. It grew very quickly. And in the beginning, there was actually a period where this room was open, I think, for 5 or 6 weeks nonstop, because we had members coming in from every continent and every time zone, and they would take over hosting, and it was just absolutely fantastic. And so a lot of us were up around the clock in these rooms, and you obviously were a big part of this, because I remember you were always present when Cyprus woke up in the morning, you were on, and I remember we had some fantastic conversations. So thank you for your support, of course.
Oh my God, thank you for doing it, because, I was a tour guide when I was young, and I was a conference interpreter, and I was traveling all the time. In 2019, I had left Cyprus 19 times. And then suddenly we were hit by this, we were locked up, and it was going into that airport, I used to wake up in the morning and look, I was looking forward to go to the airport lounge now in my pajamas. And what you were saying about airport lounges and that random people meet and talk is true, but in today's world, people mostly look at their phone. So they don't really, in real life, they don't really talk so much together anymore because, they're busy, they have their laptop or they look at their phone. But in our airport lounge, in the Clubhouse airport lounge, people were really exchanging and they were talking about themselves. And it was amazing.
Yes, true. And I think a couple of things that made it really special was we had two key rules. Number one was no pitching or selling of any product or service. And number two, no politics, because those are obviously divisive topics. And so it became a safe space as well, right? For people who were sick of being pitched whatever product or service, they can come and they talk about where they traveled to. We talked about, some geopolitical issues. We spoke about what's happening in other countries. The most fascinating thing to me was that I got to speak to, for example, SpaceX engineers. I got to speak to Harvard biologists. Even Elon and Zuckerberg were on at one point. Like, everybody was on this platform. And these are people that, as much as even if we traveled nonstop, we would probably not meet them in real life. And that reach, I think, was absolutely incredible.
It was indeed. And I just want to mention here that later on, people started meeting in person. And I just very recently had a conference here in Cyprus for the Global Women Club Cyprus. And one of the ladies who I met in the International Airport Lounge, Martina Kwan, traveled from Los Angeles to Cyprus for 2 days to attend my conference. And we had met in the airport lounge. This is incredible. Now, Klaus, I want to come back to the airport lounge later, but I want to talk a little bit about, because you're an interesting person. You are not just the founder of the airport lounge, because, it's funny because it was such an important thing, but it doesn't exist. It only exists in fiction, but you have created a lot of other stuff. And your name sounds German. You are of German origin, aren't you?
Yes, I was born in Germany. My whole family's from there, from a city called Düsseldorf on the west side. We left Germany when I was very young. I was 7 years old. My dad worked for a German multinational company. And so when I was a kid, he got transferred to Mexico City. So we moved to Mexico. A few years after that, we moved to Buenos Aires in Argentina. And I finished high school there. So my Spanish is probably better than my German at this point. And then I moved to Los Angeles after high school. And I was very passionate about music since I was very young. I got into music. Yes, as a kid, I played guitar, played in bands, made some records and toured a little bit. And then later on, moved towards the production side. This was, late 90s, maybe around 2000. We were still selling records. And was fortunate to have a very good run in the music industry. Also worked on the TV side, produced some projects for, the X Factor's Idols and the Voices of the World. And then technology was really shaping our future, no matter what professions we were in, right? So tech was leading the way. And I got really fascinated with technologies. And, these young entrepreneurs, at 18 years old, coding and building software platforms and apps. So I sold my music entity and got into technologies and helped build software companies, advising them, raising funds, kind of like in the business development function. And so, that's been like the last 10 years of my life. And most recently this year, was fortunate to close a new venture. Close a deal, not close the company, but open a new company, which will enter the Web3 space. It's also music related, but also really giving content creators a new platform into the Web3 space, which is absolutely fascinating. And so that's going to be an exciting period coming up in 2023 and beyond.
Amazing. I want to go back. You were telling a lot of things now. I have to dig a little deeper. You were 7 when you said, because I usually ask all my guests on Most Memorable Journeys, how old were you when you went on a plane for the first time? Do you remember that?
Must have been on the plane probably 4 or 5. I remember still living in Germany, and we went down to, I believe it was Valencia in Spain on a holiday. I do remember, I actually took a picture of the pilots too. I had a little camera. I do remember that very well. It was very exciting. There's certain things just stay with you, I guess.
They do. And then you went to Mexico. Your family moved to Mexico at the age of 7. That must have been quite, obviously, a life-changing, but maybe also a little shocking experience for a little boy of 7 to suddenly leave the environment that he was used to and arrive in a completely different country. How did you feel? Do you remember anything?
Absolutely. Oh, it was incredible. It was fantastic, only because you grow so much, in a new culture. You learn how to adapt. You learn a new language. Keep in mind, the younger we are, the faster we learn, right? That's no secret. So, but I did go to German schools. My parents wanted me and my brother to go to German schools so we could, go back to a German university if we so chose. I never did, but my brother did. He went back. But yeah, it was a bilingual school, and also later on in Argentina as well. So it was challenging because we had to, take every exam in both in English and in German and Spanish, right? So when I graduated later in Argentina on the German school, it was called the Goethe-Schule, famous German writer. So I got the German high school diploma, which is called the Abitur.
Mm-hmm.
But I also got the Spanish bachillerato, which is like the Spanish equivalent of a high school diploma. So every test we had to take in German and in Spanish, literature and both. So it's fully bilingual and twice the work. And but yeah, it was a fantastic experience. Me being the blonde kid, but really being a Latino at heart, it's kind of fun. I should be a secret agent, really.
Maybe you should. But, it's so true because my kids grew up here in Cyprus, and for me, it was very important also that they spoke German. I spoke to them in Swiss German, but I wanted them to speak proper German, and I sent them to German lessons, and they did all their exams at the Goethe Institute. And, whatever you have learned, children are sponges and they learn so easily. And it's the best, the most comfortable time to learn a language. I am sure that you looked back many times and were grateful that you were given this opportunity to literally, you grew up trilingual.
Yes. Yeah, it's a complete blessing, not just for personal growth, but even later in life, in business and communication. We communicate, right? We're human beings. So, and it's interesting, and I'm sure you'll agree with me being multilingual yourself, is that our personalities do change a little bit when we change languages, right? Like there's certain mannerisms and even our body languages changes. It's like I feel like I'm slightly different in Spanish than I am in German or English. It's fascinating. It's like having multiple different hard drives in our brains that we recall when needed.
This is so very true. And speaking a language also helps one understand the culture. And I think understanding the world has a lot to do with understanding and respecting other people's cultures, and also eliminates racism because you start understanding people so much better when you speak their language. And when you start understanding even their, a little bit of poetry sometimes, or the way, like here in Cyprus, the stories, the hospitality in Cyprus, all that is connected to language and the way people greet each other and wish each other. And it's the same in every single country in the world.
Yes, and it gives you're absolutely right, and it gives you the tools and experience to navigate your way into newer cultures that you haven't been exposed to yet. For example, was it 5 years ago, I went to China. I was negotiating subsidiary for a California software company, and got invited to China to meet with business leaders, executives, and government officials, and having to understand and learn about Chinese culture, which is so foreign to European or American cultures. You really have to become the learner, the observer, we call it EQ, right? Emotional intelligence. You have to understand what motivates people, what are their goals and ambitions, and how do you negotiate something where people both get up from the table and they're happy and excited. And that was a great experience. I mean, I didn't learn any Mandarin Chinese. I was only there for 2 weeks, but it was a fantastic experience to actually be able to do business there. Besides, it's a beautiful country. Anyone should go to China. Just leave the politics aside. I know it's complicated, but the country and the culture and history are absolutely fantastic. And so is the food.
And that is the same in so many other places in the world. It's politics and very often also religion that put all this stuff in people's minds. It's the media that all those stories that circulate, which very often are not true. And it's better to go and test it yourself, go yourself and find out. And I think one thing that I have learned, and I am sure you agree with me, at the end of the day, despite all the cultures and all the languages, we are all the same people.
Absolutely. And going back briefly to the International Airport Lounge and Clubhouse, one of the most fascinating conversations took place when we met people from countries that most of us had not visited, and actually asked them, ask that person, hey, how is your country? How do people live? How does it work? And not listen to the media and the press, but talk to someone from Sri Lanka, from Saudi Arabia, from Laos, you name it, right? And just learn from them. And I remember there were several great people who were giving us like a 20-minute referendum on their nation, right? Their people, their culture, their history, their food. And it was so eye-opening. And that people had the time, obviously, because they were stuck at home, to tell us about their countries. And everything we see in the news just became insignificant, right? Because we learned from the people on the ground themselves. I thought that was absolutely fantastic.
That totally fascinated me. And people were proud. People love to talk about their country. I have this thing about Cyprus. I'm Swiss. I love Switzerland and I always will. But Cyprus has become my home. And when people visit me here, I take them to places. I want them to see it and I want them to like it because I like it too. And I think when you like a place, you want to show it around and you want to make it sound good. And show the good sides. And I think we should just leave all the politics up to the bad people, because it really is. It's the people who should rule the world and not the politicians. And I think it's entirely up to us what we want to create. And that is definitely what you had created in that airport lounge.
Thank you. And as I'm sure you know, many of us have met up in person. Actually, we started meeting here in LA. I don't know if you remember Karen, Alex, Karima. I know these names don't mean anything to your listeners right now, but there were people that were part of the lounge who were here in Los Angeles. And we actually did meetups during the pandemic where we had to sit outside with masks, but at least we were able to get together and meet in person. A lot of friendships were made. And over the last 2 years, many of us have met up in the States, in Europe. Most recently, this past June, I was in Croatia, and Tim, British banker who came over from Italy, he said he stopped by. Friends in Zurich had meetups, London. It's been fantastic. And most recently also in Japan. If you remember Marika, she hosted a few meetups. So yes, there were legitimate, valuable friendships made. Some of these relationships actually led to business transactions as well, which is really fantastic because that shows you the level of trust that was created. And it was completely organic. It was a surprisingly successful social experiment. That's the best way I can describe it.
I think that's the perfect way of putting it. And I had serious FOMO because I was missing all this because I was sitting here in Cyprus and I saw you guys meet up in LA. And you have an Instagram account for the International Airport Lounge. And I used to see those pictures there and it's fantastic. Now, coming back a little bit to most memorable journeys and traveling in general, where do you like to travel to? Do you go to Germany regularly still, or what is your favorite place to go on holidays to?
Good question. I haven't been back to Germany much. I'm very grateful to have kept the passport. But My brother lives in Munich, but we usually meet in Spain. Most of my family is actually based in Spain. It's also my second home. I have a rule, works really well for me. I want to see at least one new country every year, right? It's challenging because there's over 100 and we don't get to live that long usually. So we have to really make an effort to see hopefully one or maybe two places every year. Needless to say, we lost 2 years of that time frame because of the pandemic. So we have some catching up to do. But generally, for us here from California, I do love Europe. I want to spend more time in Europe. I love Spain, Portugal. I love the Mediterranean. Croatia this year was new for me. I had not been there. So I enjoyed that trip. I was there in late June, early July. I flew to Split and drove north and stayed near a town called Trogir, an old Roman sort of small island fortress. Really nice. Went down to, checked out Split, which was nice, but pretty touristy. But you have all these islands off the coast with little villages on it. So everything happens by boat. It was a beautiful country, lovely people. And very affordable, really. I mean, quite cheap, but I think that's going to change because I believe the euro comes in that next year. So, but Croatia was a very nice surprise.
When I worked as a translator for the police, I visited all those countries on the Balkans. Montenegro is beautiful. Bosnia is very beautiful. And Albania is definitely an up-and-coming country. And my daughter just traveled recently. She drove from Zurich to Greece through these countries. And I mean, it's just the south of Albania. Mm-hmm. She showed some pictures of beaches which look like the Caribbean. There is still a lot to do, and you are right. That's a very, very good concept to visit a new country every year. And I do know that there is one country that you also have to visit and you haven't been to, and that's Cyprus.
That is true. I have not been there. I need to I'm so embarrassed because I haven't been to Greece yet either. I know it's really bad. But keep in mind, here's the thing, Elizabeth. Geographically, Europeans have such a privileged position because you have 10 to 12 countries in a 2-hour flight radius in Europe, right? Yeah. Us here in the States, the closest, beach place would be Mexico. And I go to Mexico often. Costa Rica is beautiful, but it takes more of an effort and at least a 12-hour flight to get to Europe or Asia. So it's a bit more of an effort, but I have to make the effort. I'm fortunate, sorry about that, to have seen most of Latin America. But yeah, I love to see more of Asia as well. And but yes, I'm going to put Cyprus on the list and see. Obviously, I have the perfect tour guide already.
You do.
So look forward. I'm sure. How is your food? Is it somewhere between Mediterranean, Turkish, Greek, Lebanese, or mix of all?
This is one thing that I always say. And if there was no politic or no religion, all this area here, Syria, Lebanon, Egypt, Turkey, Cyprus, Greece, it's the same. It's the same food. It's the same beautiful hospitality. It's the same beautiful people, friendly people who are interested in other people, family orientated. They get together. I always say they have the same hair. I'm jealous. They have this nice, thick, curly hair. I used to pay a lot of money to have perms when I was young, and they go to the hairdressers and straighten their hair. So, it's really, it's beautiful. And, but you were saying, okay, the United States, you have to travel far, but we also have to admit that the United States of America is a very, very beautiful country, and you can travel forever without leaving the country. I used to be a tour guide in the US as well, and I have been all over the place, and there is a lot to see there. So, people who don't have a passport, they can still travel a lot.
That's very true. I mean, right here where we live in Los Angeles, Southern California, we have the beaches, the ocean, we have the desert, and we have mountains where you can go skiing. Like 2 hours from here is Big Bear or Whistler. Sorry, not Whistler, that's Canada. What am I talking about? It's early, forgive me.
I understand.
So in winter, we can ski. We have the ocean, the beaches, we have the deserts. And the United States, we have Florida, which is the Caribbean. We have the Northwest and Northeast, which is, green forest and lakes, deserts in the middle, flatland. Absolutely. The U.S. has a very diverse, it's a massive country, right? It's huge. So yes, a lot of diversity and good places to visit.
Absolutely. But as you say, like here, because Cyprus is very far down in the Eastern Mediterranean, our flights from here to Beirut are 20 minutes. And I actually visited Jordan for the first time last year. I don't know, it just never happened. And I totally fell in love with Jordan. I fell in love with Petra and Wadi Rum and the Dead Sea. And then from here to Cairo and Tel Aviv, it's a 40 minutes flight. It's an hour and a half to Athens. So if you come into this area, you have to visit several places. It's definitely worth it.
That sounds fantastic. I would love that. That's one part of the world I have not been to yet. I have friends from Israel and love to go there. Jordan, like I said, stunning. Lebanon, I think, is beautiful as well. Look, anywhere you have olive trees and good olive oil, you're going to find good people.
That's true. Everything tastes good when there is garlic and olive oil in it.
Isn't that the truth, right? I mean, if you start the pan with extra virgin olive oil and garlic, it doesn't matter what you put into it. It's going to be amazing.
Nothing can go wrong after that.
It's still one of the greatest smells on earth, right? When you when you smell garlic and olive oil, you know you're in somebody's home. It feels homey.
That's true. We are already getting to the end. This time flies when you're having fun. What's happening in the future with Klaus Derendorf? Apart from what you said, what's coming in 2023? What country are you going to visit? What's the new country that you're going to visit in 2023? Do you know?
Well, I need to see how much time there will be for traveling. Like I said, we just founded this new company. We got venture funded. There's a lot of goals we have to achieve, but I hope to see more of Asia. I've only been to Japan on a layover, which doesn't count. So I want to see Japan. Thailand I've been to. I'd love to see Vietnam, Laos, Cambodia, Malaysia. I think I just love the culture, the people, the food. So that part of the world I'm still lacking. I'm also, during the pandemic, I call me crazy. I was watching so many documentaries about Nepal and the Himalayas. I'm not a rock climber, but I would love to at least see the Himalayas at one point. Maybe hike up to Everest base camp one day. That's probably as far as I'll be able to go because I'm not a trained, mountaineer. But yeah, we only have one lifetime on this planet, so we have to, I think, make an effort, to see as many places as we can in person. Budget allowing and whatever financial means we have available to do so. And I think India would be fascinating. And one country I have not seen at all is the African continent, and I think there's a lot to be discovered there as well.
Yeah, and there is, of course, Africa is very, very different. North Africa with Tunisia and Algeria, Morocco is very beautiful. And then, of course, there is South Africa, which is absolutely gorgeous. And then when you say that to somebody from Tanzania or from Kenya, they will say, hello, we are there too. There is it's beautiful. The world is a beautiful place. I think we totally agree on that. And the other thing that I wanted to say, I noticed I am not in Clubhouse much anymore. I actually went recently just to have a look what's happening. But the International Airport Lounge is still going, isn't it?
We haven't had a Clubhouse room in a long time, but we do have a Discord group and we have the Instagram page. So those of us who remained in touch, we are still in touch, as you are through Instagram. We're probably going to do maybe a pre-holiday reunion, maybe in December. A lot of us kind of asked, like, hey, we hadn't spoken in so long. It would be nice to do a reunion room to get the band back together, so to speak. It would be really fun.
I think that would be a lot of fun. And I would love to be told when this is going to happen, because I would love to join and meet my old friends. And it used to make me laugh because when one entity, International Airport Lounge, there was always somebody, the moderator was asking, what would you like to drink? And in my place, it was like 6:00 in the morning. And I used to think, okay, I'm going to have a Manhattan while I was having my tea.
Yes, it's safe to say, during the pandemic, I think our alcohol consumptions all went up, but it was temporary. It was just because you could, right? It was like, we're stuck at home. Why not have a vodka martini for breakfast or a Bloody Mary? Who cares?
We're still alive and we're still going and we're talking here. And it's been an absolute pleasure having you on Most Memorable Journeys. And I really, really want to thank you for doing this, for taking the time and getting up early and speaking to me.
Thank you so much for having me, Elizabeth. It's great to reconnect and have a conversation. And, congratulations on all the great work that you do with your club and your community in Cyprus and beyond. And of course, feel free to share my socials if I can be of any help to any of your community members. Always happy to reach out and connect.
If you enjoy my podcast, please like, share, and subscribe to my channel. You will find all the information in the show notes.